Started. So welcome to 1 Million Cups Columbus, again virtually. So thank you for joining us. And normally this takes place in person, but we have been going virtual for the past couple months during this whole pandemic. And we'll continue to do so for the foreseeable future. But one of the things that we pride ourselves on is the networking and what we're able to do and collaborate. It's not about us; it's sharing the education and the presenters' stories about their company and about the lessons that they've learned, and getting that collective knowledge amongst entrepreneurs. So with all those that are on Zoom with us, feel free. Let's go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself. Just give us a brief who you are, where you're quarantining from or joining us, and we'll get to know each other, and then we'll jump into Ryan's presentation here. So I'll just go down on my screen. So Andrew, why don't you?
So I'm Andrew Cohn, and I'm in University Circle in Cleveland, and I'm one of the organizers for the Cleveland 1 Million Cups chapter. We meet monthly, not weekly, but I thank you, Columbus, for allowing us to join you on a weekly basis.
Perfect. Yeah. Gary?
Yeah, I'm Gary Bauer. I live in Village of Orange in Cleveland area. I'm also one of the organizers for the Cleveland group. And this is my first time watching you guys.
All right. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So Dan?
Thanks.
And I'm Dan, and I'm an architect. I'm actually in the process of starting a joint venture business, which is offering virtual reality services to developers and architects and the such.
Nice. Well, thanks, sir. And where are you joining from?
Columbus, Ohio.
All right. Cool. Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm one of the founders of Schooled LLC, and so we develop new metal casting processes, and we're currently in Gahanna, Ohio, planning to move down to Grove City and build a bigger facility, hopefully later this summer.
Nice. So, well, welcome.
Thanks.
So, and then let's see, I think the other people we've got on here, we've got George and Mark. So the co-organizers from Columbus. So you guys go ahead and introduce yourself since we got a minute here.
George, go ahead.
Hey, excuse me. Good morning, guys. George Zarepsky. I used to say I was recent to Columbus, but I guess it's almost been 2 years now, and joined the organizer team back in 2018, December, along with Mark. And it's just been a blast meeting all the small business owners, entrepreneurs, good idea fairies. I mean, the whole gamut. It's just been an amazing experience. I'm loving it, and looking forward to many more years of connecting.
And this should be pointed out, George is a co-founder of the Urban Accelerator X, which helps accelerate underserved entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, small business owners, et cetera.
So apparently a little too modest too. Thanks, Mark.
And I'm Mark Doyle. I founded MailJive, which helps business leaders preserve and leverage employee knowledge before they leave. And I'm also a software developer by trade. And like George said, hooked up with 1 Million Cups Columbus at the same time. In fact, both of us moved here the same week, joined to organize the same week. So it's been a fun ride, and we're glad we're here. Steve?
Awesome. Yeah, no, so those two have been instrumental in helping 1MC Columbus. Both had been involved with 1 Million Cups from other chapters, other areas. So both came here like right as 1MC Columbus was kicking off and got involved. So they do an awesome job, and appreciate everything behind the scenes that takes place that a lot doesn't happen on Wednesday morning. So, but welcome again. Thank you for joining us, and we'll introduce. Some may know him. If you've ever been to our in-person meetings, he first presented, I believe, is October of 2018. If I recall, is in the small room at Rev 1 back then, and share with us. and then I think you joined in one of our panels last year. And then obviously you and your wife and co-founder have been all over the different startup scene and different events and hosting startup weekends and all sorts of things. So without further ado, I'll introduce Ryan McManus with Share. And he's here to tell us, what Share is, what they're doing, and then we'll get into some Q&A. So Ryan, welcome. Thank you. And tell us about what you got.
This is cool. And I think what this small group is going to be able to do is be really interactive. So I'll keep an eye on the chat box if you want to send me any specific questions, or you could unmute yourself. I'll give a little background on myself. I'm calling in from Clintonville here in Columbus. I've been quarantined since about March 11th. My company, Share Mobility. So often we used to just say Share. Now I'm really adamant about saying Share Mobility. I had a really big mobility investor tell me they hated my name because it was just too simple and you couldn't know what it did. It didn't mean anything. And so it's really important we say Share Mobility. And Share is a mobility company. And what we're trying to do is change the way that people move and get them to plan their commute, share rides to the places they go the most, and reduce their reliance on single occupancy vehicles and cars they own. And our mission is to be able to bring equitable access to transportation into every community and every neighborhood. And we're doing that with our software. And until March 15th, we were increasing every week for the last, 18 months. Our volume kept going up. And one day schools shut down, one day employers went to work from home. The third day of the week, senior living communities went on lockdown. 95% of my customers were paused. What we did in March was we adjusted and started doing some short-term prescription delivery work. We worked with ScriptDrop to do prescription deliveries across Ohio and into Pennsylvania. And we've started to do some grocery delivery, but we're still moving people. And now we're helping companies think about how their employees are going to return to the office, what their commute will look like after COVID. What does ride sharing look like? How many people are we going to be able to put into a vehicle? 14, 24 people we used to have in a vehicle, probably not doing that anymore. So we have to figure out what that experience is going to be to look like. But I think like everyone on this call, as an entrepreneur, I see nothing but opportunity in a very, very terrible situation. Our business had already made a lot of changes, maybe 6 months before COVID, to get to profitability. We had struggled to raise more capital last year as WeWork made anybody with assets look really bad, and Uber and Lyft failing to show profitability as they went public made it really hard for transportation companies that were still investing a lot in their technology as they were growing. And so we had to make some adjustments last year, and I'm really glad we did, because it put us in a position to be able to withstand this situation. And so even though our sales volume dropped very quickly, we've got a great core team that's keeping it together. And what we're focused on is Share as a software company. And a lot of people know us as a transportation company where we've got vans and drivers. And after COVID-19, we're going to be a pure software company. And so that's the big shift in our business right now. We did get a PPP loan. And so that might be interesting to anybody who wants to understand more about that process. We did get a PPP loan. We haven't gotten the EIDL SBA loan. We've applied for it. We may get that. We didn't get any support from Jobs Ohio for funding. We had I was actually in the process of raising capital. I was going to close on around like mid-March, and half the investors pulled out. And so, thank goodness that PPP loan came in, because it really filled the gap in funding from lost revenues and lost fundraising. And if it weren't for that, I think we would be looking at a much, much different company right now. Honestly, I'm not sure we'd make it. So I've been asked this question a bunch about, like, should you have taken the PPP loan? Was that really meant for mainstream businesses? And I'll argue this forever, that I think we made the right decision, that we made an ethical decision, that the PPP loan was for businesses that had their revenue disrupted by COVID. And we did. 95% of it was gone immediately, all due to COVID. And you could clearly tie back to it. So for us, it was a lifeline that helped save the business. And now we are actually hiring. Like, we're in a hiring phase right now. I'm hiring salespeople. I'm hiring a CTO. I'm hiring developers. And so it's like almost just like readjust the business and then be ready for the recovery, because there's a vacuum of economic activity that's not happening right now that is all going to happen. What we don't know is when it will happen. I have a board of directors, and for an early entrepreneur, board of directors is something that you don't necessarily think about. If you've built businesses as a solo entrepreneur, you don't have anybody giving you guidance. It's all on you. You don't have to pause to ask for advice or approval. But for me, a board is something that for the last 2 years has been extremely valuable in refining our business. And the advice I'll share that my board told me was, you can't build your plan based on it going back to normal at a guess of a future date, an estimate of a future date. You cannot build the business that way, because you do not know what's going to go back. You do not know when it's going to go back. All you can do is build a plan on a new normal. And so for Share, what we have now is a refined strategy about how we're going to take over the world with mobility. I'm going to put my software in the hands of other people that right now have no work, right? There are thousands of private transportation businesses, and there are 6,500 public transportation agencies that are all 90% down. They're all looking for work. And what Share's been able to do is we've built a network. Now we've got, I think, 30 operators in different parts of the country that 60 days ago we did not have. And they're starting to do the fulfillment of the work for us. And what Share is going to be great at is taking in the enterprise demand, the marketing to get riders to use the service, and the technology to help an operator manage that. The operations side is going to be done across the country by different operators. And that was always my plan. I was just planning on taking 18 months to do it, and I did it in 60 days thanks to COVID. So I'm an entrepreneur that rides the highs and lows. So like March was just, from like an emotional standpoint, just awful. April and May have been really optimistic. And I think, like, at least for me, my process is that, like, I get down on myself and I just think about it and I work through the problem, and it kind of creates emotional hell for the other people that have to be around me, but my family upstairs. But it's my process, and it's how I work through it, right? And it's realistically going through the thought process of, what if we shut down? What if I decide tomorrow to shut down? I never wanted to. I never thought I would, but I forced myself to go through that process. And I think because I did, I feel more confident than ever that I'm building a business that the world needs. The world needed Share in 2018, the first time I came to talk to you guys about it. In October of 2018, I had just signed my first really, really big contract. I think we maybe were doing like $40,000 in revenue a month. I should have done 400 this month. Maybe I'll do 40 again. But we'll get back to normal. Columbus as like this test city. We get to kind of see how a bunch of different things are turning back on. Public universities, public governments, or state governments, public transit agencies, schools, municipalities. We get to watch all of this stuff. So the goal for Share is that we get our hooks into enough cities that when I'm literally looking for people just like everyone on this call, right? Somebody that's an entrepreneur, somebody that wants to work independently, but somebody that's kind of looking for a system. They don't want to buy into a franchise. They want to have some ownership over it. And so it's like these city champions that we'll have are going to be responsible for taking the Share playbook and getting it started in the city. They don't have to make decisions about routing. They don't have to make decisions about who's a good driver and who's not. They just got to be good at coaching and hiring and keeping vehicles clean.
Perfect. Yeah. So, well, we can get you in touch with a lot of, I think, 180 other cities. So there's 1MCs everywhere. But let's open up Q&A for the participants here. So let's get interactive. Perfect. George,
Still muted
are you
there.
taking a picture?
Okay. Hey, Ryan. I remember the first time I met you, I'd just been here a little bit, and Steve introduced me to you over at Rev One. And you know, every time I see a Share truck, or I'd seen a Share labeled vehicle, after that I thought of you, and I've seen your wife speak. And first of all, just thanks for all the work that you've been doing, man, and just pushing through with that entrepreneur spirit. That's been pretty awesome and inspiring to see. I consider you one of the, you know, the success stories of Columbus. And, you know, like you said earlier, this is a, you know, give it a shot, see how it works kind of city. And then it usually leaves, and you've stayed. And so that's been great. Looking forward to your growth with this new pivot. So anyway, one of the questions I had going in was, you know, what are some of the revenue streams? How do you actually make money with what you're doing, and how do you differentiate yourself from the other rideshare companies out there? Clearly, as you just explained, you know, that whole thing has changed a bit, and you've pivoted now. And so it sounds to me like now it's going to be more software driven. You're going to enable other people that want to actually do the logistics part to have a more streamlined back end or operating system to be able to work that through. Is that pretty accurate?
Totally. I'll explain kind of my, we've been doing a lot of work on like chart of accounts and how we account for our business. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that doesn't come up in a lot of like startup education. It's just like, you need to account for it properly to look like a software company, or else your margins are going to be out of whack. The investors won't know what they're looking at, yada, yada, yada. So at Share, on our P&L, we have a couple of different revenue lines. One of the revenue lines is MaaS, mobility as a service. Anything that goes into the MaaS bucket is a annual or more contract with a large organization that's buying transportation services on a regular basis, okay? Ultimately, I think that is going to be the biggest line item for Share, because that is me selling to JP Morgan Chase an hourly rate for services, and it's turnkey. They don't have to split it up. It's not this piece or that piece, and it's recurring revenue. So mobility as a service is going to be my number one bucket of revenue. And then my cost of goods for that today is what it costs me to operate. As I bring in third-party operators in Cleveland, like we've got a great partnership happening with Senior Transportation Connection. We've got partners in Greenville, South Carolina. What will happen is that my cost of goods becomes the hourly rate I paid them to fulfill the mobility as a service, okay? Then I have software as a service. This is when I'm selling software to someone else who's using it to operate their own business, but I'm not selling to the end rider, right? Then I have charter. Charter is any type of transportation service that's not recurring. So, for example, we're doing work to help Goodwill employees move because COTA services have stopped. That is accounted for as charter revenue until I get an annual contract. And the reason is that I have to look at, in calculating potential future multiples, what is one-time business versus what is recurring business, and recurring business is what's really valuable. And then I also have a line item for data revenue, anything that we pick up from like collaboration, data monetization, advertising. If we put wraps on the vehicle and we sell advertising on it, I put it into that bucket. So those are kind of our major revenue line items on a P&L that we think about for the Share business. And mobility as a service is kind of a new category. It's a very new category.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, and Ryan, let's highlight, because I know that you guys did some, when this first all hit, you guys stepped up because you weren't transporting people, and you helped out different organizations get, whether it's people or supplies or whatever. I mean, let's give some kudos and whatnot. But just tell us, how you stepped up as a community player to leverage your resources to help, when this pandemic first came on set.
Yeah, hibernation was a very real possibility, right? We could have just said, you know what, cut every expense, do nothing, wait till it gets back to normal, and then reemerge there. Our team didn't want to do that, and our customers were coming to us with problems. This all started out of previous customers we served having new needs, and Share saying, all right, we're going to adapt to this new normal. Delivery hasn't picked up as much as I thought it would. I anticipated grocery stores closing more than they did and being more restricted. People are still able to get out and get a lot of their things. So there's not a huge spike in delivery volume, but it's nice. And what I've learned about delivery, though, is delivery is half as valuable as moving people. So my gross revenue potential in an hour of services is almost half in moving things versus people. People are just a more valuable commodity. We have something that's more differentiated than we do on the delivery side. There's tons of delivery companies. You can see that, like, there's a startup called Deliv, D-E-L-I-V. They just closed down because after COVID, their business spiked and they just lost more money. Like, they had a losing business model. More revenue means more losses. It's just bad. But that was the logic of building a startup up to 6 months ago. So it's all on my team and their willingness and interest in doing other things. And they put up with my new ideas, and this was one they really wanted to run with.
Gotcha. From a capital management standpoint, so you said you were about to close around, and then all this hits, investors back out. So you got the PPP loan, which is great. I think that is, honestly, that's exactly what it is meant for, is those impacts. So I wouldn't feel bad. The large companies, that have lots of assets that can survive it without and just took advantage of it, that's the questionable ones. But with that, how do you take on the outlook now for your capital management plan? I mean, do you expect to go out and do more fundraising in the near term, or what's your ride schedule here look like?
I really hope I don't have to go on fundraise. I've learned that my business isn't exactly what VCs want. It's got a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and there's reasons behind all of it, and I'm adamant that the business needs to be the way it is. And so if things go right, I don't raise money again. I want to be off that hamster wheel. I want to be in control of my destiny. I want to be building the profitable mobility company where Uber and Lyft have not, right? And so I'm not really thinking about fundraising, trying to not take a lot of there's been a lot of inbound interest from investors, so I'm trying not to spend any time on that. And sales cures all, right? And so all I'm trying to do is and sales is what helps us execute our mission, right? The more I sell, the more people I can impact. And so, maybe fundraising will be part of our future again, but I hope not.
Hey, I've got a question.
Absolutely.
Jason Nami. So first of all, I don't know if you're responsible for it, I assume you are, but your website and all I've seen your vans driving around. They all look good. So
thanks. I actually am responsible for the graphic design. I'm still our marketer. And so okay. I designed them and I came up with the graphics kit, and I probably put graphics on half the vans we have.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Good choice. Good choice. It really, because before I saw you, before I knew who you were, and that made me go look at. So Thank you. Small business, and I have a small marketing background, and I kind of look at those things too. So I really wanted to let you know that it's good. I saw your location. I mean, it worked in a lot of ways. So I wanted to ask. So you said you basically COVID jumped you toward what you originally planned on doing. Mm-hmm. Now, in hindsight, right, because you said 18 months, so you had a plan. This is what you were doing. I doubt COVID gave you necessary tools for that, right? So it seems like you had to relook at things, change your plan, and do it now. My question for you, because I too have started a business with the idea of it being something different after, right?
Stepping stones, right?
Yeah.
Evolution. It's not different.
There you go.
Everybody will tell us it's different, but it's not. It's evolution of a vision.
Okay. Well, so you skipped a whole bunch of stones. In hindsight, or maybe you haven't had enough time to digest it yet, but did you need them to begin with? Were they there because you thought you had to take steps?
That's a great question. I'd say you're right. I would say that I looked at the world and said, it's this way right now. I can't make as much, I can't quickly change away from what I'm doing, right? I've got people I serve, I've got customers I've committed to. That was more than I've got these vehicle leases. But when we stopped running, it became an opportunity that said, okay, now I can gut it and change. I explained this to somebody on my team. I explained it to my accountant, TJ. She's great. I explained it as like, if I wanted to be a rock star, the way to ensure that I never got a regular job is to get a neck tattoo, like Travis Barker style, right? If I got a neck tattoo, I would never have a traditional job, forces me to be a rock star. And so at Share, I have these vehicles. Now, I had vehicles that were people relying on them every day and I couldn't get rid of them. Now, no one's relying on those vehicles. I'm just getting rid of them so I can never go back. And so, like, I've got a whole thing. We're trying to turn the extra vans we have into RVs and sell them as RVs. And I'm looking for somebody that will help us with that conversion. And so, you're totally right. I concocted the reasons why I couldn't do it. They weren't real barriers, right? I could have gone back to the customers and said, you know what? We're just going to stop service because I'm getting rid of it and we're not doing that anymore. I wouldn't have made that decision. I don't know how I could have gone to the board and said, I'm cannibalizing 75%, 85% of my revenue to be the software company I know you guys want me to be. They'd have gone, no, you can't. But when the revenue is taken away from you, then you make those decisions. And so I think maybe the only real barrier I had was the perception that I needed to keep up the revenue. And one of the reasons I needed to keep up the revenue was because the machine required it, right? I had drivers and employees and all these overhead that I have to pay, and you just couldn't cut it overnight. And I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have put the business into this situation. I guess I could have. I don't know. Maybe I just wouldn't have had the guts to do it.
No, I get that. So it's a little bit of all of that, right? It's recognizing this is where you're going, this is what you need to do. And then COVID really shut everything down, so you actually had the chance to do it. And that's what I'm going through. So I love that transition.
This is an unprecedented time for us to get to work in the lab, right? Like, I think we're both in our basements.
Yeah.
And, like, I've never been happier.
I'm so with you, dude.
I've got all my stuff here. This is my space.
Yeah.
I love it. I love this way of working. And while I don't have a lot of people to lean on, at the end of the day, it's all on us as the entrepreneur anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Your investor believes in you. The customer believes in you. The employee believes in you. And the bigger our company got, the less time I had to work on the company. And now I get to do the things I really, really love. with tons of experience, right? I've ran this business now for almost 4 years. June is going to be 4 years. It's like starting from scratch with all the knowledge, 10 times more capital than I had when I started, huge customer case studies, and a bunch of people that really believe in it. And so now if I can avoid those mistakes and do it right, I should be able to get to my mission that much faster. I try.
That's great. Yeah.
All right, we got a great question, Jason. Great answer. Mark asked, what are your biggest challenges spreading the share mobility model to other markets?
Great. Education about what we are, how we're different than Uber, why the public bus isn't already covering what we do. I think those are the biggest things that we have to do. We have to educate. And so, Steve, almost the same way that you and George in each city, one or a group of people takes the leadership over 1 million cups, right? I've got to be able to reproduce how we've taken over leadership of mobility in Columbus and Cleveland and reproduce that in other cities. And I think the best way to do that is going to be to give somebody ownership over it, right? Give them the ability to be the entrepreneur in their own market, right? And when I think back to who I was as an entrepreneur 5 years ago before I started my first business, oh, God, no, 6 years ago, almost 7. I would have loved the opportunity to be handed a playbook and a system that helped me develop as an entrepreneur, building on somebody else's versus having to do it all on my own. So I think the biggest detriment to our growth is educating and finding a champion in market because the need exists. There's also I have to get people over the perception that public transit has it handled. Like one of the things they spend too much time on in Columbus is advocating why code is not going to do something and then using their own words to show people that they're not going to do it, right? But people go, well, code is going to do it. No, if they're not. They're going to do a lot, and we're going to do a lot with them. They're not doing everything.
All right, and let's see. Got another question here. As you transition to a fully tech business, what is the single most important adjustment to your delivery model, and how are you thinking about distribution in this new world?
So it's control of the third-party operator, right? And so we are now proving that through our technology, I can get somebody else who's not my employee to drive as safe as we would, to deliver the same level of service. And so to do that, we first controlled it all. We were the only people using our own software. Then I had senior living communities, employers, and other groups that were our customer, but they did it under their own brand. So if they messed it up, it wasn't hurting my brand. Now I've learned that I can control another operator through our software and make them drive as safe as we drive. And so now I'm putting the tools in the hands to control those operators. I don't have it all built out. We have one person that can manage like 10 operators. I don't have the tools for one person to manage 10 people that are managing 100 operators. So that's probably, from a tech perspective, the big thing that we need to build is just additional management tools to handle new layers of scale. Like, did anybody hear about how Root built all those claims management procedures recently? Like they had a huge spike of claims. They had to go hire a ton of people. Then they built software to automate it. It's not too far off.
Yeah, well, we actually, let's see, I think that was our last meeting in person. We had Jimmy with Root come in and also Script Drop and talked about how, from the outside, startups appear, like they've got everything together and that, it's all, not rainbows and unicorns, but just for better, that's what it appears like, right? To the outside people looking in. And Jimmy was talking about at Root how they had built out the entire, system and had no way to renew people. You know, that insurance is a revolving policy, and with renewals every 6 months. So they went out and sold a bunch of insurance policies without the policy in place or the system in place to renew them. And that's the thing. And that's, you know, those are the cliffs that you jump off as the entrepreneur. But it's not, you know, if I guess people saw behind the curtain, they'd be, you know, chaotic and, oh my gosh, what are you doing? But from a true visionary entrepreneur like yourself, you've got this destiny that you're manifesting, right? I mean, you know where the road that you want to head and where you're pointed at. Obviously, stuff like COVID can adjust that and everything, but you're able to recognize the opportunities in there and still be pointed at that North Star, right? For guidance.
Have I said this in any of my past meetings? It's a thin line between vision and lying. I mean,
yeah,
like, I've got a big vision around what I'm doing with Share. If I don't deliver, it comes off as a lie, right? So like that's a tough thing for as entrepreneurs. But I agree. It's about creating the future we want, manifesting our destiny, having that kind of vision. I don't know if anybody's into The Secret. Like, I'm a big fan of The Secret, and how you can focus on something and make that your entire being and what you work towards every single day. I can tell you, when I wake up and when I go to bed, Share is on my mind every single day.
Yeah.
My wife is on my mind every day.
So I guess, you know, with that, as we, you know, I still think we've got a lot to deal with COVID and the pandemic, and there will be some new norms set. How do you see that affecting kind of the long-term, you know, whether it's startup, whether it's the workforce? You know, you deal a lot with the corporations that you're transporting people to the commercial realty, which, you know, now people, I mean, Twitter, I think, just came out this morning and said, if you want to work from home for the rest of your employment at Twitter, we're on board. So what do you see as the trend, or as the quote new norm, as we, you know, transition all through this?
At a high level, my vision of how this is going to affect the world is that we move from a world of consumer-driven economy to a consumer-optimized economy. And by that, I mean, right now, choice drives everything, right? Like, on demand means right now. Amazon has killed all of their competitors by saying you can get stuff to your house in an hour. It is not financially feasible to do that for a very long time, right? You can only do that when you have way more money and you can lose more than everybody else. SoftBank approach, right? And so I think we are entering an era where we need to be telling consumers what is best for them. We need to be telling employees what is their best way to commute, what is the healthiest way to live. And I have no idea how this is going to affect the work from home trend. I mean, it's going to make it easier for people to work at home. I worked at home a lot already. I've been working at home for maybe a decade. A lot of people at our team, we made all of our dispatchers virtual. There are going to be a lot of people that still need to go into a physical office. Those who are forced to go into a physical office are going to be the ones likely to earn the least. Those are going to be people hired by staffing companies, working in light manufacturing and logistics. They're the people who are spending 30% of their household income on transportation a year, and those are my customers. And those people we will continue to serve. And so I think that the COVID hurts my riders more than the rest of the world, and they're going to need us a lot after this. And so we've got a whole big campaign about RTTO, return to the office, and trying to get companies to think about, okay, you're going to make your call center employees go into the office. You're going to let your developers work from home. Okay, so the guy making $150K a year gets to work from home. The person making $32,000 a year has to spend 10 grand a year to get to work. Okay, that is awful, right? So we are going to get companies to fund that disadvantage. And if you're going to show up in a physical office, you're going to get a nice, clean, safe ride. And hopefully it's share.
Yeah, I like that. And I agree with that. Yeah, that there's people going to continue to have to work. And you're right about that demographic of those people, and giving companies an option to give transportation so they can get their employees there. They're going to need to do that. It's going to be like as a service. Like I remember, 25, 30 years ago when my mom came to me and was like, hey, have you heard of this prepaid legal stuff? You need to sell it. And I'm like, what? Sell stuff? And now it's a service. You know what I mean? And that was like 10 years after that. So I definitely believe, and your idea about the turning the vans into RVs, I was reading something and I came across an idea where a guy was renting out RVs so people could visit other people. So he would drop the RV outside of your relative's house so you could go visit them and stay in the RV while you visit your family. And I thought that was a good idea because he transported it there and picked it up, or so people flew into town, stuff like that.
Portable hotel. That's cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're doing that with we brought our RV back, and they've got a RVs for MDs, so that people that are fighting COVID can have a place to stay but still be home with their family. So ours is going to a doctor down at Wexner Medical Center, so that she can. She's got a high at-risk son that has asthma and everything, and so didn't want to risk herself staying in a hotel, so they stay in the RV. So there was a whole movement on that. I think the Facebook group's up to like 30,000 people or something.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool to see the efforts.
Very cool.
But, anybody else out there have questions? Feel free to unmute and ask Ryan here.
Hey, Ryan. Sorry. Wow. Early morning and didn't have my coffee. No coffee. So you mentioned hiring spree. Is that on the site? Where can folks go to find out about?
Yeah, I think it's ridewithshare.com/careers, but from our website, you can get to the careers page. We've got all of our jobs listed. We're always hiring drivers. We offer healthcare benefits and 15 plus an hour for drivers, but we also have, I think there's a couple of developer jobs, CTO, might be a marketing manager position right now. And we're looking for an account manager, and we're also looking for a software as a service sales manager, somebody that will manage a group of salespeople, taskmaster kind of thing.
So as you develop out, and I mean, is this something where you've got, I guess, other people doing that Uber-esque model, where they have other time jobs, but they own an asset or have access and can pick up part-time stuff with you? Or is this like, hey, if you've got this, we want to pull in your fleet or your thing full-time?
What we're going to do is we're going to go find professional operators. So it's not going to be the independent guy with a van. It could be somebody that says, I want to buy 5 vans and I want to start a business around this. Our customer is going to be a business, not an individual trying to be an independent driver. And that's like Cardinal Transportation or Urban Express. There's a half dozen to a dozen in every single city. They run vans and charter buses and things like that. Those are the groups that are going to be our customers because they have professional and CDL drivers. They do background checks and drug tests. They meet our standards that an independent driver wouldn't.
Gotcha. So now, I guess, so the industry as a whole, how is your competition reacting, to this? I mean, being a startup, you guys are a little bit more nimble than, that's where being startups and small and has its advantages, right? You can shift quickly and serve a market and then go like you've done. How's the competition in the industry adjusted, or where do you see them?
We don't run into, this is weird, we don't run into a lot of competition, like in hand-to-hand combat on sales deals. It's usually like us or nothing. There are adjacent companies that are doing slightly different things that I know I will run into. And one of them is Via. So like VIA's trying to push in public transit agencies. Like right now, VIA is working with CODA to help CODA lose even more money. Right? That's the message I'm trying to get out. If you use VIA, you're helping your transit agency lose even more money, right? And VIA just raised $200 million. So I'm up against that. We had a company, Intel bought a company called Move It last week for $900 million. This is like an app that allows you to check your bus pass and stuff. It's super simple. The automakers are pulling back heavily on their autonomous vehicle investments right now, but they're still thinking about R&D. I can guarantee you they're thinking about like, how do we create a car that has dividers in it? Honda just put out a car that has these plastic dividers in it in Detroit, so you can be in a ride-sharing vehicle and feel like you're protected. A lot of our competition will go out of business. So, like I said, there's 6 to 12 small family-owned transportation businesses in town. Half of them or more are going to go out of business. There might be a roll-up strategy for us where we go and get private equity dollars and then go roll and buy up a bunch of transportation companies that are underwater. Maybe. But that doesn't get me to the software business that I want to be if I buy those companies.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question. So, because I know we're looking at it from same scenarios as the acquisition market, you know, and being able to jump scale, hop those lily pads faster, get across the pond, and you know, it could be a strategy for, you know, helping people that want to get into it. Say, hey, we'll help leverage and purchase these, you know, assets or this acquisition, you know, for you, and then let you manage it and have the ownership and a payback model or something like that. I know Ford had invested in Chariot, I believe is what it was called. And
Ford actually shut down 2 competitors last year. So they killed Chariot in January of 2019. I won all their local customers. And then they shut down Go Ride Health in December. That was good because we were both like pitching Cleveland Clinic and other things. So we spent a lot of time in University Circle, working with the hospital providers up there. Locally, EmpowerBus decided they were going to shut down. Asleen is a great friend of mine. I really admire what she was doing. She just decided to, and she's working at CODA now, so she gets to kind of extend her mission and go over to CODA. So that's cool. But I think there's going to be a lot of those small companies that struggle to get through this. It's good for us though, because what we're good at is the enterprise sales. Nobody is good at that. Absolutely nobody. We're better at it than Chariot was.
Yeah, so that's a huge competitive advantage. And so being able to leverage that, manage it, and then, you know, it's like anything. Once you've got those big names or those big wins behind you, it's instant credibility when you're walking into the door to the next one, right? It's like, guys, we're already handling Chase. We've seen, we understand the problems behind the scene that you're dealing with. It's a different brand on the front door, but we know what you're dealing with. So.
Are there opportunities for smaller businesses, or are there grant opportunities for that people can take advantage of to introduce mobility solutions for their employees? Are there tax opportunities, credits, things like that?
Yeah, so Share qualifies as a federal transit pass benefit. You can pay up to $260 a month per employee as a pre-tax benefit. So that saves everybody a little bit of money. You can't put an Uber, you can't do cargo and those kinds of things. So Share is unique in that. Columbus has, through Smart Columbus, they've got some matching grants for companies of certain sizes that if you launch a program, you can get $15,000 to help with that. A lot of the funds end up getting managed at the state level through the Department of Transportation. And so the Federal Transportation Agency will say, we're going to put $900 million into workforce mobility. They'll send it out to the 50 DOTs. Ohio might get 75 million or 50 million, something like that. And then the $50 million from DOT gets assigned out to different regions and managed through groups like MORPC. And my advice is to companies is let us help you navigate how to find all of those incentive programs. And so the message from Share is that we have the playbook for companies to introduce mobility benefits programs. Before you ever pay us $1, we do a lot of work to help you understand your transportation problem so we can define an ROI for you and then propose what our program would be. All I need from an employer is a data file of their employees' addresses. I don't even need names. We can do it with zip codes, but it's not as accurate. And if I know where all the employees live and I know your shift times, I can tell you who needs to ride together, what is the most optimal way to get everybody to work and bring that cost down.
Yeah, it's just thinking like ad hoc events for education platforms like the Urban Accelerator X, where they cater to people that might not have transportation yet, but they the way to get out of their current situation is through entrepreneurship. So how do you get them there for routine education events, things like that? So George, I hope you're paying attention. I'm thinking about you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I think what we try to always do is like partner with somebody who will help fund it, right? And a lot of times the people that have the need aren't the ones that have the resources. So for example, we started like 2 weeks ago, we're doing services for Goodwill. Goodwill is coordinated maybe a dozen different employers, and it's all funded by the Columbus Foundation. So Goodwill acts as the single grantee from the Columbus Foundation. They go and aggregate the demand from all of these employers so that the employer doesn't have to be large. Like we've got Freedom a la carte with 5 people that's participating in this. So an entrepreneur could get a part of that program if we can tap into it.
Awesome. So I think that takes us to the top of the hour here, Ryan. Know you're a busy man, and appreciate the time that you've given us today and the insight. So always great to hear from somebody that's got such a powerful vision and the determination to go out and do it. That's awesome. So congrats on what you've accomplished. Thanks for being a community player and stepping up and then providing advice out there to others. If you do want to talk to other 1MC chapters, we're happy to make introductions out there. So this platform does provide itself a kind of unique scenario so that you can get out there and any of those markets that you're identifying. Let's look for the community leaders there and happy share mobility there. But with that said, we always ask, what can 1MC do for you? How can we help? So,
I think right now it's important that people know that Share is going to make it. Right, we're gonna stay alive, and so I appreciate you guys all coming to this. And if you talk to somebody about cool startups, mention Share. We want to be top of mind here locally. Our customers are big companies, and also if I can help any of you with your businesses through a connection, I think that's the thing that makes Columbus great, is that everybody's really helpful. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for, advice and connections and things that people have done like you guys. So let me know what I can do to help you.
Hey, George.
Awesome.
Hey, George, they got a CTO opening.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
So, well, thank you everybody for joining us on taking time out of your Wednesday morning. So we will be back here next week. So virtual, you can sign in. Maybe Zoom has got the Facebook live stream working, but we do record and post it. So we've got Harley with Honest Jobs here next week. So feel free to tune in next Wednesday, same place, same time, 9 a.m. We'll see you then. Thank you, everybody.
Good luck, Ryan.
Thank you.